And welcome back to Law and Crime. We're still following the trial right now in Florida of the murder of the FSU professor Dan Markel. One of the biggest moments during the trial was when Wendy Adelson testified, and that, of course, is the victim's ex-wife. Investigators believe that the motive was a custody battle between Markel and the ex-wife, but neither of her family members have been charged, and they all deny any involvement in this murder. So we have a very interesting dynamic. We're going to break this all down here, but let's go back and listen to her testimony first.
When did you separate from Mr. Markel?
We separated in the fall of 2012.
And was part of the reason for your disagreement or separation having to do with how to raise the children in terms of your faith?
Yes, we had different ways of practicing our faith.
Okay. Do you know when you filed for divorce?
I believe it was the fall of 2012.
Okay, 9/10/2012 sound right to you?
That sounds right.
And when you separated initially in the fall of 2012, did you move to South Florida with the kids?
No, I did not.
You didn't go to South Florida with the kids?
No, I did not.
Was it your desire during that time to move with the children to South Florida?
I would say right then, no, it wasn't.
Are you familiar with a court order ordering you to come back to Tallahassee from South Florida?
I'm not familiar with that.
When you moved out from the marital home there on Trescott Drive, you lived at another residence in Tallahassee, is that correct?
I did.
And do you recall the address there?
I do. 3303 Aqua Ridge Way.
Okay. And was there a time during the time that you were living there at Aqua Ridge that you determined that you would like to move to South Florida with the children?
There was.
All right. And were your parents very involved in trying to facilitate that relocation?
My parents were supportive of me moving to South Florida.
Would you describe your parents as being over involved in your personal business?
As compared to other people's parents?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. What was the custody situation with the kids?
So the custody situation changed over time and depending on the part of the year. But I think in the beginning, we would do a Wednesday night overnight. It was about 50-50 shared custody, but I don't remember the exact arrangement. I do remember in the summertime it would switch to week on, week off, but during the school year it was slightly different.
So still 50-50, but not necessarily every other week. It was mixed up within the week.
It was.
Okay. And you mentioned that you did develop a desire to move to South Florida. Did you file a motion to that effect on January 14th, 2013?
That sounds, I did file a motion. I don't remember the exact date.
Okay.
But that sounds about right.
All right. And in that motion, did you make some allegations that Mr. Markel was making things difficult for you at work?
I did.
Okay. And was that motion granted or denied?
That motion was denied.
All right. Denied with prejudice?
I don't remember.
Okay.
If you have it, I'm happy to take a look.
Okay. But in any event, you were not able to move at that time?
I did not move.
And were you upset about being stuck in Tallahassee?
I was relieved.
You were relieved. You wanted to stay in Tallahassee?
I was happy at my job.
All right, so the testimony from Wendy Adelson, which many of you have probably seen, some of you have not. With me today to break this all down, we have Jacqueline Newman. She's a Manhattan divorce attorney with Berkman, Botker, Newman, and Shine. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So after seeing some of the testimony from Wendy, what'd you think?
I mean, she seemed incredibly cavalier. The fact is, the father of your children was murdered in cold blood, and she seemed incredibly coached. And, she just wasn't a believable witness in my eyes.
And let's talk about custody disagreements and their relationship to people's actions and how that all plays in to divorces and, of course, here with this Markel murder.
Right. So, I mean, custody, as you can imagine, is an incredibly emotional thing. So people can act crazy. I mean, Most people don't ultimately hire hitmen for their, to do anything like that. But yes, people can act insane. So I think what sounds like it happened in this sort of situation is that she wanted to move. She was denied the relocation because the courts are very, very protective of the relationship that children have with their parents. And so if one spouse, parent, is very, very involved with the children, they're not going to permit relocation. And that sounds like what happened in this case.
And when you heard about this, did you automatically think that it was interesting how her parents had such an overbearing role into this situation? I know she said she just testified that she didn't think that, but reading through all of this, we know that they had a big pull on this in her life and her actions, and whether that be because of a monetary reason or because of their behavior. What did you think about the parents' role?
Yeah, I thought the parents were incredibly over involved. I mean, as I understand, there was actually a pending protective order motion out where the father was trying to have the grandmother it would have been, supervised in her act in seeing the children, and that was really based on the fact that she was bad-mouthing the father. So obviously they were very involved. I understand there was talks about them trying to give some sort of bribe of $1 million for him to relocate. So they really were very, very meddlesome, obviously, in this woman's life.
All right, and we have one more clip from Wendy that we want to play for you where she goes into detail more speaking of their divorce. Let's listen.
Would you consider your divorce with Mr. Markel to be a nasty divorce?
I think most divorces aren't very pleasant.
Okay, but this one was like really unpleasant, right?
I found getting divorced to be unpleasant, yes.
And in the litigation that ensued between the two of you, you guys argued over things as small as a tennis racket, I noticed in one pleading.
I don't remember that.
Did he threaten to press kidnapping charges against you?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I don't remember
Remember
that. No.
Did he threaten to go after your law license? Remember that?
I don't remember that, no.
Do you remember him saying you failed to disclose a bunch of assets in the divorce process?
I do remember that.
Okay, did you guys have any mediations as part of your divorce?
We did have mediations leading up to settlement.
2 8-hour mediations, correct?
I don't remember how long they were, but they seemed very long.
Yeah, and they both did not result in a resolution.
They did not.
All right, but you did reach a settlement, I think, kind of just on the eve of a trial on the matter, correct?
That sounds right.
Do you remember this motion that was filed by your deceased ex-husband on March 26, 2014, involving, among other things, that had to do with your mother, an allegation that your mother was disparaging the children? I'm sorry.
Overruled.
Disparaging him to the children is what I meant to say. Are you familiar with that pleading?
I am familiar with that pleading.
All right, and in that pleading, did he allege that you were depriving him of physical access to the children?
I don't remember the specifics.
Do you recall whether he was complaining about you refusing to communicate with him about right of first refusal to the children during your time with them?
I know he was frustrated about the Skyping.
Lack of communication via Skype?
It's hard to
between the
Skype
children?
with 2 toddlers, yes.
All right, and in that motion, do you recall him being upset about an allegation that you let the kids eat non-kosher foods?
I remember him being upset about that in general, but I don't remember whether it was an emotion or not.
All right, so more from Wendy there. Let's talk kind of generally about how families cope with divorce and how the hostility always is going to probably play in with this, in your experience. What do you think, and how do you relate it here to the Markels?
So, I mean, as you know, divorce is more than usually unpleasant, as she had just stated, but it's difficult, and obviously emotions are strong, and that's kind of one of the reasons that people do ultimately get divorced. I mean, one of the things that we really recommend to people when they're going through the divorce process is to, as best they can, keep their emotions in check, because it can really spiral out of control. It's incredibly expensive. It's expensive, I always say it's expensive in therapy bills, it's expensive, in legal bills, and if people can really kind of step back and focus on children, especially, when there are children involved, and really think, what's going to be best for them? Is it best that we go to war, or is it best that we really figure out a way to settle this?
And how about during her testimony when she repeatedly said that she did not remember a lot of things when she was getting asked those questions? Was that weird that she was claiming to not remember, whether that be true or not? I mean, I know this was a number of years ago, but still, did you find that odd?
I found that incredibly odd, and I don't believe it. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone accuses you of kidnapping your children, you remember that. That's not something you just randomly forget. So I actually don't believe her at all.
And one of the things we know that's happened since all of this has unraveled is that she actually changed her son's names back to her maiden name, Adelson. And they don't go by Markel. What do you think of that? Is that typical? Is that strange to you?
That's very strange to me, and it's absolutely not typical. I mean, what she claimed, as I understand, is that she wanted to protect the children from the media, but I mean, the thing that's kind of ridiculous about that is her name is in the media just as much as his is. So I don't believe that. I think she really is just trying to carve out his entire family. As I understand from my reading of the case is that his parents have not actually seen the children since she's taken custody. So she's really just trying to erase the father from these children's lives, and it's awful.
And is that something that obviously I'm assuming will have repercussions on the children as they're growing up?
I would absolutely think so. I mean, these children, the fact is that they, I'm sure, are reading about this sort of stuff and they know what's going on. So, I mean, I can't even imagine the devastation that they're feeling to begin with. And then on top of that, you don't have a mother who's trying to facilitate his memory and keep the family in there. And so I just think, yeah, these children are going to have some serious issues they're going to have to deal with.
All right, Jackie, any other final thoughts you have on this case?
As a most thing, I mean, I'm not believing it as I watch it. I think it's incredibly, incredibly sad. And, I just really hope that whatever happened here, that justice will be served.
All right, Jacqueline Newman, thank you so much for being on our show today. We have to take a break right now on Law and Crime. Plenty more after this. Stay with us.